The phone call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, and Caleb Turner knew, before he even saw the name on the screen, that answering it would change everything. Outside, rain hammered against the windows of his small apartment like fists demanding entry. Inside, his 6-year-old daughter slept peacefully down the hall, unaware that her father was about to make a choice that would bring a ghost from his past directly into their carefully ordered life. The name glowing on his phone was one he hadn't seen in 7 years. Lena Brooks. Her voice, when he answered, was barely a whisper. "Caleb," she said, and in that single word he heard everything: fear, exhaustion, and the kind of desperation that comes from having nowhere left to turn. "I'm sorry, I didn't know who else to call." Before we begin, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's dive in. The apartment was finally quiet. Caleb stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing the last of the dinner dishes, listening to the rhythm of rain against the windows. It was the kind of storm that rolled in from the plains with purpose, heavy, insistent, turning the streets outside into rivers that reflected the yellow glow of streetlights. He dried his hands on a towel worn soft from years of use and glanced toward the hallway where his daughter's bedroom door stood slightly ajar, a slice of warm light spilling out. Emma was 6 years old, all wild curls and questions that never seemed to end. She'd fallen asleep 20 minutes ago with her favorite book still open beside her, something about a girl who talked to animals. Caleb had read it to her 3 times already this week, but she never tired of it. He never complained. These moments, these quiet evening routines, were what held his world together. He was 32 years old, though some days he felt decades older, the kind of tired that settled into bones and didn't leave. His hands were permanently stained with engine grease no matter how hard he scrubbed. His back ached from long days bent over car engines at Miller's Auto Repair, where he'd worked since he was 19. The pay was steady, if not generous. The work was honest. It was enough to keep the rent paid, food on the table, and Emma in the decent elementary school 3 blocks away. The apartment itself was small: 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that opened into a living room barely big enough for a couch and a television. But it was clean, safe. Theirs. Photos of Emma covered the refrigerator, held in place by magnets shaped like letters. Her drawings were taped to the walls. A pink backpack hung by the door, ready for school tomorrow. This was his life now. Structured, predictable, built entirely around the small person sleeping down the hall. It hadn't always been this way. 7 years ago, Caleb's life had looked completely different. He'd been 25, reckless in the way young men often are when they think they have endless time to figure things out. He'd worked odd jobs, spent too many nights in bars, dated a woman named Sarah who'd seemed exciting right up until the moment she told him she was pregnant. They'd tried to make it work. Moved in together. Talked about marriage in the abstract way people do when they're not really ready for it. Emma was born on a Tuesday in March. Caleb held her for the first time and felt something fundamental shift in his chest. Suddenly, the future wasn't abstract anymore. It was this tiny person with perfect fingernails and his mother's nose, depending on him for everything. Sarah left when Emma was 8 months old, packed her things one afternoon while Caleb was at work, and was gone by the time he got home. She left a note saying she wasn't ready to be a mother, that she needed to find herself, that this wasn't the life she'd imagined. The note was 2 pages long, but that was all it really said. She sent money sometimes, birthday cards with generic messages, called twice a year, always promising to visit, never showing up. Emma didn't remember her. Caleb had photos in a box in his closet that he told himself he'd show her someday when she was old enough to ask questions. But Emma rarely asked about her mother. As far as she knew, it had always been just the 2 of them. And that was fine with Caleb. He'd built a good life for them. Not fancy, not exciting, but solid, reliable. Every morning he woke Emma up with a song she pretended to hate, but secretly loved. Made her breakfast, usually scrambled eggs and toast, sometimes pancakes if they had time. Walked her to school, kissed her forehead, told her to have a good day. Then he'd head to the shop where he'd spend 8 to 10 hours replacing brake pads, changing oil, diagnosing strange sounds that people swore their cars were making. Evenings were homework at the kitchen table. Dinner he'd learned to cook through trial and error. bath time that somehow always ended with more water on the floor than seemed physically possible, and stories before bed. He read to her every single night. It was the rule he never broke, no matter how tired he was. His social life existed in the margins. He grabbed beers occasionally with guys from work, watched football on Sundays when Emma was at her friend Madison's house, dated exactly once in the past 3 years, a woman named Kelly who worked at the diner downtown. They'd gone out 4 times before she gently suggested that maybe he wasn't really ready to date, that his heart was too full of being a father to have room for anything else. She wasn't wrong. They'd parted on good terms. This was enough. This was everything, this small, quiet life with his daughter. The phone rang. Caleb glanced at the clock on the microwave. 11:47 p.m. His first thought was that something had happened at Emma's school, or maybe his mother calling from Arizona where she'd retired last year. But when he pulled his phone from his pocket and looked at the screen, the name he saw made him freeze. Lena Brooks. He stared at the name for 3 rings, his thumb hovering over the answer button. 7 years. 7 years since he'd heard from her, since he'd even thought about her for more than a passing moment. They'd known each other in high school, not well, but they'd shared a few classes, existed in the same social circles. She'd been quiet, pretty in an understated way, always a little apart from everyone else. After graduation, their paths had diverged completely. He'd heard through the town grapevine that she'd gotten married, moved across town, worked at the public library. Why was she calling him now? At midnight during a thunderstorm? He answered. Hello? Caleb. Her voice was barely audible over the sound of the rain through his phone. I'm sorry. I didn't know who else to call. Something in her tone made his chest tighten. This wasn't a casual call. This was someone in trouble. Lena, what's wrong? Where are you? A pause. He could hear her breathing, uneven and quick. When she spoke again, her voice cracked. I'm locked out. Marcus, my husband, he locked me out and I don't have anywhere to go. Thunder rolled across the sky, emphasizing her words. Caleb's mind raced. He barely knew this woman. They'd exchanged maybe a dozen conversations in their entire lives, none of them in the past 7 years. But the desperation in her voice was real. And he'd been raised by a single mother who'd taught him that when someone was drowning, you didn't stop to ask how they'd ended up in the water. He glanced toward Emma's bedroom. She was asleep, safe. He could be back before she woke up. Where are you exactly? He asked, already reaching for his keys. Maple Street, 2847. I'm on the porch. I'm sorry, Caleb. I know it's late and we haven't talked in so long, but Stay there. I'm coming. He hung up before she could protest or apologize again, grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door, wrote a quick note in case Emma woke up, though she never did once she was down for the night. Checked on her one more time. She was curled around her stuffed elephant, hair spread across her pillow like a dark halo, and quietly left the apartment. The storm hit him the moment he stepped outside. Rain came down in sheets, soaking through his jacket before he'd made it halfway to his truck. The parking lot was empty except for a few cars, their windows fogged. He climbed into his old Ford, turned the key, and pulled out onto streets that were already flooding at the curbs. Maple Street was on the other side of town, in one of the newer developments where houses all looked similar and lawns were maintained by service companies. It took him 15 minutes to get there through the storm, windshield wipers working frantically to keep up with the downpour. He found 2847 easily enough, a 2-story colonial with dark windows and a covered front porch. And there, sitting on the steps with 2 duffel bags beside her, was Lena. She was soaked despite the porch roof. Her hair hung in wet ropes around her face. She wore jeans and a thin sweater completely saturated with rain. When his headlights swept across her, she looked up, and even from the truck, Caleb could see she'd been crying. He parked in the driveway and got out, jogging through the rain to the porch. Lena. She stood when she saw him, wrapping her arms around herself. Up close, she looked worse than he'd expected. Her eyes were red and swollen. A bruise was forming on her left cheek, dark against her pale skin. She was shaking, from cold or fear or both. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I shouldn't have called. I just didn't know. Stop apologizing. Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. He picked up both duffel bags without asking. Come on, Let's get you out of here." She hesitated, glancing back at the dark house behind her. For a moment he thought she might refuse, might choose to stay here on this porch waiting for a locked door to open. But then another rumble of thunder echoed across the sky, and she nodded, following him to the truck. The drive back to his apartment was quiet. Lena sat in the passenger seat, arms still wrapped around herself, staring out the window at the rain-blurred streets. Caleb kept the heater running, trying to warm her up. He wanted to ask questions about the bruise, about her husband, about why she'd been locked out of her own house. But he could sense that she wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. When they reached his building, he grabbed her bags again and led her upstairs. The apartment felt warmer than usual, almost stuffy after the cold rain. Lena stood just inside the doorway, dripping onto the mat, looking small and lost. "Bathroom's down the hall," Caleb said, setting her bags by the couch. "Take a hot shower, warm up. I'll find you some dry clothes." She nodded mutely. While she was in the bathroom, he pulled out clothes from his own dresser, sweatpants with a drawstring waist, an old college t-shirt, thick socks. He left them folded outside the bathroom door and then went to check on Emma. Still asleep, still peaceful, still unaware that their quiet life had just expanded to include a stranger seeking shelter from a storm. He made coffee, put a blanket on the couch, tried not to think about the bruise on Lena's face or what kind of man locked his wife out during a thunderstorm. When she emerged from the bathroom 20 minutes later, her hair was damp but clean, combed back from her face. The bruise on her cheek looked darker against her clean skin. She'd rolled up the sleeves of his t-shirt and the sweatpants bunched around her ankles. She looked young, vulnerable, like someone who'd been trying very hard to hold herself together and was finally allowing the facade to crack. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the clothes, for coming to get me, for everything." Caleb handed her a mug of coffee. "Sit. You want to tell me what happened?" Lena sank onto the couch, wrapping both hands around the mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then, slowly, the words began to come. "I met Marcus 5 years ago at a library fundraiser. He was charming, successful. He owned a contracting business, and everyone seemed to respect him. He made me feel—" She paused, searching for the word. "Seen, like I mattered. We got married after 8 months. Too fast, probably, but I was 26 and tired of being alone, and he seemed so sure about us." She took a sip of coffee, her hands trembling slightly. "At first it was small things. He didn't like my friends, thought they were a bad influence. He wanted to know where I was all the time, who I was talking to. He said it was because he loved me, because he worried. I believed him. I cut people off, stopped going out, convinced myself that he was just protective, that it meant he cared." Caleb listened without interrupting, his jaw tight. "Then it became rules. What I could wear, what time I needed to be home, how I spent money, even though I had my own job. He'd get angry if I questioned him, said I was being ungrateful, that he was just trying to take care of me, and I let it happen. I kept thinking if I just did everything right, if I just made him happy, it would get better." Her voice cracked and she set down the coffee mug. But it didn't get better. He started yelling, breaking things, punching walls. He never hit me, not really, but he'd grab my arm hard enough to bruise, push me, corner me against walls and scream in my face until I couldn't breathe. And the whole time he'd say it was my fault, that I made him angry, that if I just listened, if I just stopped being so difficult, he wouldn't have to act this way. Tears were streaming down her face now, but her voice stayed steady. "Tonight we had an argument because I came home 15 minutes late from work. 15 minutes. There was an accident on Route 40 and traffic was backed up, but he didn't care. He said I was lying, that I was probably meeting someone. He started throwing things, yelling about how I never respected him. I tried to leave just to get away, to let him cool down. But when I came back an hour later, the locks were changed. I knocked and knocked, but he wouldn't answer. I could see him through the window, just sitting there, ignoring me." She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of the borrowed t-shirt. "I sat on that porch for 2 hours before I called you. I didn't have my phone charger, my credit cards, anything. Just what I'd grabbed when I left earlier, some clothes, my laptop, a few personal things. I called my mom first, but she didn't answer. My sister lives in Colorado. I don't have friends anymore. Marcus made sure of that. And then I remembered you." I don't even know why. We barely knew each other in high school, but I remembered that you were kind, that you helped people, and I was desperate. The rain continued to beat against the windows. The apartment felt very small, very quiet except for the sound of her crying. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You did the right thing, calling me, leaving. Did I? Lena's laugh was bitter. I left my own house, my marriage, everything I've built for 5 years. You left a man who hurt you, who controlled you. That's not the same thing. She looked at him then, really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. You needed help. That's enough. It was a simple answer, but it seemed to settle something in her. She nodded slowly, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. You can stay here tonight, Caleb continued. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps. But right now, you need to sleep. I can't take your bed. The couch is fine. I've slept on it plenty of times. He stood, collecting their empty mugs. There's more blankets in the hall closet if you get cold. Bathroom's yours if you need it. And Lena? She looked up. You're safe here. Whatever happens tomorrow, tonight, you're safe. Something in her expression broke then, the last bit of armor she'd been wearing. She nodded, unable to speak. Caleb gave her space, retreating to his bedroom, but he didn't sleep. He lay in bed listening to the rain, thinking about the woman on his couch who'd been brave enough to call for help, thinking about the little girl sleeping down the hall who was going to wake up tomorrow to a very different morning than she expected. Around 3 a.m., he heard soft crying from the living room. He almost got up, almost went to check on her, but something told him she needed this, needed to let out the grief and fear in private, in the dark, in a place where she was finally safe enough to fall apart. The storm raged on through the night, and in his small apartment, 3 people sought shelter. A single father who'd learned that family meant showing up, a broken woman learning she deserved better, and a sleeping child who would teach them both what unconditional love looked like. Morning came gray and heavy with leftover rain. Caleb woke at 6, his internal clock never failed him, and lay in bed for a moment listening. The apartment was quiet. He got up, pulled on jeans and a clean shirt, and quietly opened his bedroom door. Lena was still asleep on the couch, curled into a tight ball beneath the blanket, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been last night. He let her sleep, moving carefully through the apartment to Emma's room. His daughter was already awake, sitting up in bed with her stuffed elephant, humming a song she'd learned at school. "Morning, sunshine," he said softly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Morning, Daddy." She grinned at him, gap-toothed and perfect. "It rained a lot." "It did. Hey, we have a guest this morning, a friend of mine who needed a place to stay last night. Her name is Lena, and she's sleeping on the couch." Emma's eyes went wide with interest. "A sleepover?" "Kind of. She might be staying with us for a little while. I need you to be on your best behavior, okay? She's had a rough time." "Okay." Emma accepted this with the easy adaptability of children. "Can I meet her?" "After she wakes up. Come on, let's get you ready for school and keep it quiet." They went through their morning routine in hushed voices, breakfast at the kitchen table, Emma chattering about a project they were doing in art class. Caleb helped her brush her teeth, tie her shoes, pack her backpack. All the while, Lena slept. At 7:30, Caleb walked Emma to school like always. The streets were still wet, but the rain had stopped, leaving behind that clean smell of washed pavement and new growth. Emma skipped ahead, jumping in puddles, full of the boundless energy that made him exhausted just watching her. "Is your friend nice?" she asked as they turned onto the street where her school sat. "I think so. I hope you'll be nice to her too." "I'm always nice." "That's true. You're the nicest person I know." At the school entrance, he knelt down to her level. "Have a good day, Em. I love you." "Love you too, Daddy." She kissed his cheek and then ran off to join her friends, already laughing about something. Caleb watched her go, feeling that familiar tightness in his chest, half pride, half fear that somehow he'd mess this up, that he'd fail her in some fundamental way. When he got back to the apartment, Lena was awake. She sat on the couch, still wrapped in the blanket, looking uncertain. "Morning," he said. "Coffee?" Please. He poured 2 cups, added cream to hers the way she'd taken it last night. They sat together in the quiet morning light, the awkwardness of strangers who'd shared an intimate crisis hanging between them. I'm sorry about last night, Lena began. Dumping all of that on you. You didn't sign up for... Stop. Caleb's voice was firm but kind. You needed help. I'm glad you called. Now the question is, what do you want to do next? Lena stared into her coffee. I don't know. I can't go back there. Not to him. But I don't have anywhere else. My mom and I aren't close. My sister would take me in, but she's in Colorado, and I can't just leave my job, my life. So don't leave. Stay here. Figure it out from here. She looked at him sharply. I can't just stay here. You have a daughter, a life. You barely know me. You need a safe place. I have a couch. It's not complicated. Caleb, look. He set down his coffee. I'm not going to pretend I understand everything you're going through, but I know what it's like to have your life fall apart and need to rebuild. When Emma's mom left, I was terrified. Didn't know how I was going to do it alone. People helped me. My mom, my boss at the shop, neighbors who barely knew me. They just showed up and helped because that's what decent people do. So let me help. Stay here while you figure things out. Get a lawyer. File for divorce if that's what you want. But do it from a place of safety. Lena's eyes filled with tears again. Why are you being so kind to me? Because you deserve kindness. And because that little girl who just went to school is watching how I treat people, I want her to learn that when someone needs help, you help them. No conditions, no questions. You just show up. The words hung in the air between them. Finally, Lena nodded. Okay, but just for a little while, until I get on my feet. However long you need. They spent the rest of the morning making plans. Caleb called in to work, told his boss he had a family emergency and would be late. Then he helped Lena call a lawyer, someone recommended by the domestic violence hotline she'd found online. The lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen, was sympathetic and direct. She could meet with Lena that afternoon to discuss filing for a restraining order and starting divorce proceedings. You'll need documentation, Patricia explained over the phone. Photos of injuries, medical records if you have them, texts or emails showing controlling behavior, anything that demonstrates a pattern. Lena's hands shook as she took notes. I have some texts, photos of bruises I took a few months ago when it got really bad. I never thought I'd actually use them. They'll help. Bring everything you have. And Lena, you're doing the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are. After the call, Lena sat very still, staring at the notes she'd written. This is really happening, she whispered. I'm really leaving him. You already left him, Caleb said gently. Last night when you walked out that door. This is just making it official. The appointment with Patricia was at 2 p.m. Caleb drove Lena there, waited in the lobby while they talked. An hour later, Lena emerged looking drained but determined. She's filing for an emergency restraining order, she told him in the car, and starting the divorce paperwork. She says with the evidence I have, it should be straightforward. Marcus will be served next week. How do you feel? Terrified, relieved, sad, angry, all of it at once. She looked out the window at the gray afternoon. I wasted 5 years on him. 5 years convincing myself it wasn't that bad, that I could fix it, that I loved him enough to make it work. It's not wasted if you learned from it. What did I learn? That I'm weak? That I let myself be controlled? No. Caleb pulled up to a red light, turned to look at her. You learned that you're strong enough to leave. That's not nothing, Lena. A lot of people never make it this far. She blinked back tears. Thank you. For everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't have to repay me. Just get through this. That's enough. They picked up Emma from school together. The little girl ran to Caleb with her usual enthusiasm, then stopped short when she saw Lena. Hi, Emma said shyly. Are you Daddy's friend? I am, Lena said, crouching down to Emma's level. My name is Lena. It's nice to meet you. I'm Emma. I'm 6 3/4. She held up her fingers to demonstrate. Are you staying at our house? For a little while, if that's okay with you. Emma considered this seriously. Okay, but you can't have my room. That's my space. Lena smiled, the first real smile Caleb had seen from her. Deal. I'll stay on the couch. That evening fell into a strange new rhythm. Caleb made dinner, spaghetti with garlic bread, while Emma showed Lena her collection of drawings and told her elaborate stories about her stuffed animals. Lena listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Emma's jokes. Over dinner, Emma asked, "Why did you need to stay at our house?" Caleb started to intervene, but Lena spoke first, her voice gentle. "Sometimes grown-ups have problems they need to work through. My house wasn't a safe place for me anymore, so your dad was kind enough to let me stay here while I figure things out." "Oh." Emma processed this. "My friend Madison's parents are divorced. She lives with her mom, but sees her dad on weekends. Is that what's happening to you?" "Something like that." "Well, you can stay here as long as you want. Daddy's a really good cook, and he reads the best bedtime stories." Lena's eyes met Caleb's across the table. Something passed between them. Gratitude, understanding, the beginning of trust. After dinner, after Emma's bath and bedtime story, after the apartment had settled into nighttime quiet, Caleb and Lena sat together in the kitchen. She'd insisted on doing the dishes, said she needed to feel useful, and now they were both nursing cups of tea. "Emma's wonderful," Lena said. "You've done an amazing job with her. I'm just trying not to screw it up." "You're doing more than that. She feels safe. Loved. That's everything." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lena spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared of what comes next. Marcus isn't going to just let this go. When he gets served with the restraining order, when he realizes I'm serious about leaving, he's going to be furious. That's what the restraining order is for. He can't come near you. A piece of paper won't stop him if he's angry enough." Caleb heard the fear in her voice, real and founded. "Then we'll deal with it, together. You're not alone in this anymore." Lena looked at him, this man she barely knew who'd become her lifeline. "Why are you doing this? Really?" He thought about the question, about his mother who'd raised him alone after his father left, about the neighbors who'd helped when money was tight, about the teacher who'd stayed late to help him with homework when he was falling behind, about all the small acts of kindness that had shaped who he'd become. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said finally. "And because I want Emma to grow up in a world where people help each other, where showing up for someone in trouble isn't extraordinary. It's just what we do." Lena nodded slowly. "I'm going to get through this. I have to. I've spent 5 years disappearing. Time to find myself again." "You will. And when you do, you're going to be amazed at who you are." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. But inside the small apartment, 3 people who'd been brought together by crisis were learning what it meant to choose family, not by blood or obligation, but by the simple decision to show up, day after day, for each other. The storm had passed, but the real work of rebuilding was just beginning. The restraining order was served on a Tuesday morning while Caleb was at work and Lena was alone in the apartment. She'd taken a week off from the library, telling her supervisor she had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. Her entire life had become an emergency, one she was navigating hour by hour. She was folding laundry. Caleb had insisted she didn't need to help with chores, but sitting idle made her anxious when her phone rang. The lawyer's number. "Lena, it's Patricia. Marcus was served an hour ago at his office. The temporary restraining order is in effect. He's not allowed to contact you or come within 500 feet of you. The hearing for the permanent order is scheduled for next Thursday." Lena's hands went numb. She sat down hard on the couch, the laundry forgotten. How did he react? The process server said he was calm, took the papers, read them, didn't say anything. That was worse somehow. Marcus's calm was more dangerous than his anger. When he was loud, when he was breaking things, at least she knew what was coming. But when he went quiet, when he retreated into that cold stillness, that's when he plotted, when he planned. "Lena, are you still there?" "I'm here. I'm just scared." "That's normal, but you're protected now. If he violates the order, you call the police immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes." After hanging up, Lena sat motionless for a long time. The apartment felt too quiet, too exposed. Every sound from the hallway made her jump. She kept expecting Marcus to burst through the door, restraining order be damned, rage pouring off him like heat. But the hours passed and nothing happened. She picked up the laundry again. Made herself lunch she couldn't eat. Tried to read but couldn't focus. By the time Caleb came home from the shop at 5:30, grease under his fingernails and exhaustion in his shoulders, she was wound so tight she thought she might shatter. "Hey," he said, setting his keys on the counter. "You okay? You look pale." "Marcus was served today." Caleb went very still. "And?" "And nothing yet. But Patricia said he was calm when he got the papers. That worries me more than if he'd been angry." He washed his hands at the kitchen sink, considering. "What time do we pick up Emma?" "She's at Madison's until 6. Her mom is bringing her home." "Good. That gives us time to talk." He dried his hands and sat down beside her on the couch. "Listen to me. We're going to be careful. I'm going to make sure the building manager knows the situation, that Marcus isn't allowed here. I'll walk you to and from anywhere you need to go. And if he shows up, if he even tries to contact you, we call the police immediately." "What if the police don't get there in time? What if he—" "Then I'll be here. I'm not going to let him hurt you." The certainty in his voice steadied her. She nodded, trying to believe it. That evening, after Emma was home and fed and occupied with her coloring books, Lena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You really think a piece of paper is going to keep me away from my own wife?" Her blood went cold. She showed the phone to Caleb without saying anything. His jaw tightened. "That's a violation. We're calling Patricia right now." "It's from a number I don't recognize. He probably used a burner phone." "Doesn't matter. It's still contact, still a violation." Patricia answered on the second ring. When Caleb explained what had happened, her response was immediate. "Screenshot that text. Forward it to me. I'm contacting the police and the prosecutor. This is a clear violation of the restraining order. They'll issue a warrant for his arrest." "How long will that take?" Lena asked, her voice shaking. "Could be hours, could be tomorrow. But Lena, you need to stay vigilant. If he's willing to violate the order this quickly, he's escalating. Do you have somewhere safe to be?" "She's with me," Caleb said. "She's not going anywhere alone." After the call, Lena sat with her head in her hands. "This is my fault. I shouldn't have left. I should have just stayed and dealt with it and—" "Stop!" Caleb's voice was sharp enough to cut through her spiral. "This is not your fault. He's choosing to do this. He's choosing to violate a court order. That's on him, not you." Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed elephant. "Why is Lena sad?" Caleb softened immediately. "She's just having a hard day, sweetheart. But she's okay." Emma walked over to Lena and carefully placed the elephant in her lap. "Mr. Trunks always makes me feel better when I'm sad. You can hold him for a while." Lena's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Emma into a gentle hug. "Thank you, sweetie. That's very kind of you." "It's okay to be sad sometimes," Emma said, with the wisdom of someone who'd clearly heard those words from her father. "Daddy says feelings are normal, and we just have to feel them." After Emma went to bed, Caleb and Lena sat together in the dim light of the living room. Neither of them felt like sleeping. The text message had put them both on edge, waiting for the next shoe to drop. "Tell me about Emma's mom," Lena said suddenly, "if you don't mind talking about it." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Not much to tell. Sarah and I got together young, got pregnant younger. She tried for a while, but motherhood wasn't what she wanted. So she left. Sends money and cards, but that's about it." "Does Emma ask about her?" "Sometimes. Less than you'd think. I have photos I'll show her when she's ready, but honestly, I think she's okay with how things are. Kids are resilient like that. You're a good father, Caleb, the way you are with her, patient, present, kind. She's lucky. I'm the lucky one. She gave me purpose when I didn't have any, made me want to be better." They fell silent again. Outside, a car alarm went off somewhere down the street. Both of them tensed until it stopped. "I keep thinking about what happens next," Lena said, "after the divorce is final, after I get my own place. I've been so focused on surviving that I haven't thought about actually living. What does that even look like anymore?" "However you want it to look. That's the whole point of getting free. You get to choose." "I don't even know who I am without him. I spent so long being who he wanted me to be. I don't know what I want, what I like, what matters to me." "So you figure it out, little by little. There's no rush." She looked at him, this man who'd opened his home and his life to her without hesitation. "Why aren't you angry about having your life disrupted like this?" "Because my life isn't disrupted. It's just expanded. Emma and I, we had our routine. It was good. But maybe we were getting too comfortable, too closed off. Maybe we needed someone to remind us that the world is bigger than just the two of us. That's a generous way of looking at it. It's the truth. 3 days passed. The police issued a warrant for Marcus's arrest for violating the restraining order, but he disappeared. Didn't show up to work. Didn't go to the house. His truck was found parked at a gas station on the edge of town, but there was no sign of him. The not knowing was worse than anything. Lena couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. She jumped at every sound, convinced he was outside waiting. Caleb started staying home from work more, unwilling to leave her alone. His boss was understanding. They'd known each other for over a decade. But Caleb knew he couldn't keep missing shifts indefinitely. On Saturday morning, Caleb took Emma to her soccer game. Lena had insisted they go, that they couldn't put their lives on hold because of her situation. She promised to keep the doors locked, to not answer for anyone, to call if anything felt wrong. She was doing dishes when she heard it, the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside the apartment. Heavy, deliberate. They stopped right outside Caleb's door, then a knock. Her heart stopped. She froze, soapy water dripping from her hands. Another knock. Harder this time. "Lena, I know you're in there," Marcus's voice, calm and cold through the door. "We need to talk, face to face, like adults." She backed away from the door, reaching for her phone with shaking hands. Dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? "My husband is outside my door. There's a restraining order. He's not supposed to be here." "What's your location?" She gave the address, her voice barely a whisper. "Officers are on their way. Stay on the line with me. Do not open the door." "Lena," Marcus knocked again. "I just want to talk, that's all. You owe me that much after 5 years of marriage. 5 years I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? By running away and making me look like a monster?" The doorknob rattled. He was testing it, checking if it was locked. "Please hurry," Lena whispered into the phone. "Units are 3 minutes away. Has he tried to force entry?" "He's checking the door. I don't know if—" A loud bang. He'd kicked the door. The frame shuddered, but held. "You think you can just leave?" Marcus's voice was rising now, the calm facade cracking. "You think some piece of paper gives you the right to destroy our marriage? To humiliate me in front of everyone?" Another kick. Wood splintered. Lena ran to the bedroom, locked herself inside, pushed a chair under the doorknob the way she'd seen in movies. Her phone was still connected to 911. "He's trying to break down the door," she told the dispatcher, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Officers are pulling up now. Stay where you are." She heard new voices in the hallway, authoritative, commanding. "Sir, step away from the door. You're in violation of a restraining order." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "She's my wife. This is my business." "Sir, you need to step back now. Put your hands where we can see them." A scuffle. Raised voices. Something heavy hitting the wall. Lena crouched in the corner of the bedroom, arms wrapped around herself, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Then silence. A different voice at the apartment door. "Ma'am, this is Officer Rodriguez. Your husband is in custody. You can come out now." She didn't move. Couldn't move. "Ma'am, you're safe. We need to take your statement." Slowly, mechanically, she stood, moved the chair, unlocked the bedroom door, walked through the apartment on legs that didn't feel like her own. The front door was damaged, the frame cracked where Marcus had kicked it, but it had held. 2 police officers stood in the hallway. One of them, Officer Rodriguez, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, gave her a reassuring nod. "Are you injured?" "No, he didn't get in. The door, it held." "That's good. We've arrested your husband for violating the restraining order and attempted breaking and entering. He'll be taken to county jail. Given the violation, it's unlikely he'll make bail before the hearing next week." Lena nodded numbly. "Okay. I need to ask you some questions. Can you walk me through what happened?" She recounted it all. The footsteps, the knocking, his voice, the kicks that nearly broke through. Rodriguez wrote it all down, her expression professionally neutral but sympathetic. "You did everything right," she said when Lena finished. "Stayed calm, called us, Locked yourself in. I know it was terrifying, but you handled it perfectly. After the police left, Lena stood in the empty apartment staring at the damaged door. She should call Caleb, tell him what happened. But her hands wouldn't work. She just stood there shaking. Her phone rang. Caleb. Hey, we're leaving the soccer game. Why, Emma's team won and she wants to celebrate with ice cream. You want anything? Marcus was here. Her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. Flat, distant. What? When? 20 minutes ago. He tried to break down the door. The police arrested him. We're coming home right now. Don't move. We'll be there in 10 minutes. He made it in 7. She heard him running up the stairs, Emma's small footsteps trying to keep up. The door burst open and there he was, eyes wild with concern. Lena. She couldn't hold it together anymore. The fear, the adrenaline, the sheer terror of those minutes when she'd thought the door would give and Marcus would get through, it all crashed over her at once. She collapsed more than sat, and suddenly Caleb was there, arms around her, solid and real. I've got you. You're okay. You're safe. But Emma stood in the doorway, eyes wide. What happened to the door? A man tried to hurt Lena, Caleb said gently. But the police came and took him away. The door protected her. The bad man? Yes, sweetheart. Emma walked over to where Lena sat wrapped in Caleb's arms. She put her small hand on Lena's knee. It's okay now. My daddy keeps us safe. The simple faith in those words broke something open in Lena's chest. She pulled Emma into the embrace, the three of them huddled together in the damaged apartment. Later, after Emma was settled with her coloring books and a snack, after Caleb had called the building manager about the door and been assured it would be fixed by morning, he and Lena sat together in the kitchen. I should leave, Lena said. I'm putting you and Emma in danger. If he comes back, he's in jail. And even if he wasn't, you're not going anywhere. This is where you're safest. Caleb, no, listen to me. His voice was firm. What happened today was terrifying. I get that. But you did everything right. You called the police. You protected yourself. And now he's facing serious consequences. Breaking and entering, violating a restraining order. He's looking at real jail time. He'll blame me. When he gets out, he'll come after me again. Maybe. But every time he tries, he digs himself deeper. Eventually, he'll realize you're not worth losing his freedom over. And if he doesn't realize that, Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then we deal with it, together. But Lena, you can't live your life afraid of what he might do. You can't let him have that power over you. How do I stop being afraid? I don't think you do. Not completely, but you learn to be afraid and brave at the same time. You learn to move forward even when you're scared. She looked at him, this man who'd become her anchor, her safe harbor in the storm. How did you get so wise? Single parenting forces you to figure things out fast. That night, Lena couldn't sleep despite her exhaustion. Every sound made her heart race. Every shadow seemed threatening. Around 2 a.m., she got up from the couch and stood at the window, looking out at the quiet street below. Caleb's bedroom door opened. He emerged in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair mussed from sleep. Can't sleep either? He asked. Every time I close my eyes, I hear him kicking the door. He moved to stand beside her at the window. That'll fade. Not tonight, probably not tomorrow. But eventually the fear becomes background noise instead of the main event. I don't know how you do it. Stay so calm, so steady. I'm not calm. I'm terrified. When you called and told me he'd been here, I've never driven so fast in my life. All I could think was, what if I wasn't there? What if he hurt you? What if Emma had been home? But you didn't show it. You just took care of everything. Because that's what needed to happen. Emma needed me to be calm. You needed me to be strong. So that's what I was. But inside? He shook his head. Inside, I wanted to find him and make sure he never even thought about coming near you again. The honesty in his words surprised her. She'd started to think of him as unshakable, this man who'd taken in a stranger and absorbed her crisis into his life without complaint. Thank you, she said quietly, for being angry on my behalf. For caring. Of course I care. He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. You're not alone in this. That's what matters. They stood together at the window, watching the empty street, two people learning that safety wasn't just a locked door or a court order. It was another human being choosing to stand beside you when everything else fell apart. The week that followed was a study in contrasts. Marcus remained in jail, unable to make bail. Patricia filed the divorce papers and prepared for the permanent restraining order hearing. Lena started sleeping through the night again, started eating regular meals, started to believe that maybe she really was going to make it through this. And in the quiet moments between the legal proceedings and the fear, something else began to grow. A friendship, genuine and deep, between a woman learning to trust again and a man who'd forgotten what it felt like to have an adult conversation that wasn't about soccer schedules or parent-teacher conferences. They talked late into the nights after Emma was asleep, about everything and nothing. Lena told him about her childhood, her dreams of becoming a librarian, the way she'd always felt slightly invisible until Marcus made her feel seen, and then used that feeling to control her. Caleb told her about his own past, the recklessness of his youth, the shock of becoming a father, the slow process of growing up overnight when Sarah left. "Do you ever regret it?" Lena asked one night. "Having Emma so young? Having your whole life change?" "Not for a second. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. But do I wonder sometimes what life would have been like if I'd made different choices?" "Sure. I think everyone does." "What would you have done? If you hadn't become a father?" He considered this. "I don't know. Maybe gone to college, maybe traveled, maybe just kept being the same aimless kid I was at 25. But none of that matters because this is the life I have, and I wouldn't trade it." Emma, for her part, had adapted to Lena's presence with the ease of childhood. She'd started including Lena in their evening routines, asking her to help with homework, requesting that she read the bedtime story, showing her drawings from school. One evening, she climbed into Lena's lap unprompted and declared, "I like having you here. It's nice having a grown-up girl around." Lena's eyes had filled with tears. She'd never wanted children, had accepted early in her marriage that Marcus didn't want them either. But holding Emma, feeling her small, warm weight and unconditional acceptance, she understood for the first time what she'd been missing. The permanent restraining order hearing arrived on a gray Thursday morning. Lena dressed carefully in clothes she'd retrieved from the house with a police escort. A simple blue dress, her hair pulled back. She looked professional, composed. Only her hands, twisting together in her lap, betrayed her nerves. Caleb had taken the day off work to be there. He sat behind her in the courtroom, a solid presence. Patricia sat beside Lena, organized and confident. Marcus was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, handcuffs clinking. He looked thinner, harder, his eyes tracking to Lena immediately. She forced herself to meet his gaze, to not look away, to show him she wasn't afraid anymore. The hearing was brief. Patricia presented the evidence: texts, photos of bruises, testimony from neighbors who'd heard arguments. Marcus's lawyer, a tired-looking public defender, tried to argue that his client had never been violent, that this was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But the judge had reviewed the police report from the attempted break-in, had seen the photos of the damaged door, had read Marcus's threatening text. "Mr. Brooks, you've demonstrated a pattern of controlling and threatening behavior toward your wife," the judge said, her voice cutting. "You violated an emergency restraining order within days of it being issued. You attempted to break into an apartment where she was seeking safety. The court finds clear evidence of domestic violence and credible threat of future harm. The permanent restraining order is granted. You are to have no contact with Mrs. Brooks for a minimum of 5 years. Additionally, given your violation of the emergency order, you'll serve 90 days in county jail. Do you understand?" Marcus's face went red. "This is insane. She's my wife. You can't." "I just did." "Bailiff, remove him." As Marcus was led away, he turned to look at Lena one last time. "This isn't over," he mouthed. But it was. The gavel came down, the door closed, and just like that, Lena was free. Outside the courthouse, she stood on the steps breathing in the cool air. Patricia was beside her, reviewing the paperwork. "The divorce will take a few more months to finalize, but with his incarceration and the restraining order, it should be straightforward. You did good in there, Lena." "I didn't do anything. I just sat there." "You showed up. You stood your ground. That's everything." After Patricia left, Caleb put his arm around Lena's shoulders. "How do you feel?" Numb, relieved, scared, like I should feel something bigger, but I don't know what. That's normal. Give it time. They drove back to the apartment in comfortable silence. Emma was at school, wouldn't be home for hours. The apartment felt different somehow, lighter, safer, now that the legal proceedings were behind them. I should start looking for my own place, Lena said as they sat down with coffee. You've been so generous, but I can't stay on your couch forever. Why not? Because you have a life. Emma has a life. I'm intruding on that. You're not intruding. Emma loves having you here. He stopped, seeming to catch himself. It's been good. Having another adult around, having someone to talk to. It has been good, she agreed. Better than good. You've given me time and space to remember who I am, what I want. I'd forgotten that somewhere along the way. And what do you want? She looked around the small apartment, at the photos on the fridge and Emma's drawings on the walls, at this life that had been offered to her without conditions or expectations. I want to be somewhere I'm valued for who I am, not who someone wants me to be. I want to wake up without fear. I want to build something real and honest and safe. She met his eyes. I want what you and Emma have, that kind of peace. You can have that. You deserve that. Do I, though? After spending 5 years being someone's possession? Especially after that. The conversation was interrupted by Caleb's phone. Emma's school. She'd fallen during recess and bumped her head. Nothing serious, but they wanted him to come get her. At the school nurse's office, Emma sat on the examination table with an ice pack pressed to her forehead, tear tracks on her cheeks. Daddy! She reached for him immediately. Hey, Sunshine, heard you took a tumble. I was trying to do a cartwheel and I landed wrong and hit my head on the monkey bars. She sniffled. It really hurts. I bet it does. He checked her pupils the way the nurse had already done, felt the bump gently. You're going to have quite a goose egg. What's a goose egg? A bump. Like this. He kissed her forehead gently, avoiding the injury. Emma noticed Lena standing in the doorway. You came too? Of course. We were worried about you. I'm okay now. Emma's tears had stopped. Can we go home? In the car, Emma sat in back next to the ice pack, chattering about the cartwheel that had gone wrong. Lena twisted in her seat to listen, making sympathetic noises and asking questions. And Caleb, driving them all home through the familiar streets, felt something shift in his chest. This feeling of completeness, of his small family expanded to include one more. It scared him how natural it felt, how right. That evening, after Emma was tucked in with extra stuffed animals and reassurance that head bumps always looked worse than they were, Caleb and Lena found themselves back in their familiar spots. Him in the armchair, her on the couch, the apartment quiet around them. She really scared me today, Lena admitted. When the school called, I felt this panic like something terrible had happened to her. Welcome to parenthood, where every phone call from school makes your heart stop. I'm not her parent. No, but you care about her. That's what matters. Lena was quiet for a long moment. I never thought I wanted kids. Marcus didn't want them, and I convinced myself I didn't either. But spending time with Emma, seeing how you are with her, maybe I was wrong about that too. Emma's easy to love. So are you. The words hung in the air between them. Caleb looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone completely different from the broken woman who'd stood on his doorstep 2 weeks ago. Stronger, surer, finding her way back to herself. Lena, I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. You've been nothing but kind, and I'm reading things into it that aren't there. That's not what I was going to say. He leaned forward. I was going to say that I think you're pretty easy to love too. And that scares me because I don't know if this is real or if it's just the situation, the proximity, the crisis bringing us together. I don't know either, she admitted. But whatever this is, it feels real. More real than anything I've felt in years. They sat with that honesty between them, neither pulling away, neither pushing forward, just acknowledging what was growing in the space where fear used to live. Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. And inside the small apartment, 3 people who'd found each other through crisis were learning that sometimes the strongest foundations were built not in calm waters, but in the storm. The weeks that followed the hearing settled into a rhythm that felt both temporary and permanent at the same time. Lena returned to work at the library, grateful for the normalcy of shelving books and helping patrons find what they needed. Her coworkers had been supportive, asking few questions but offering quiet encouragement. She'd lost touch with most of them during her marriage, but they welcomed her back without judgment. Caleb went back to his regular schedule at the shop, though he made sure to text Lena throughout the day. Simple messages, "How's work?" or "Need anything from the store?" But she understood what they really meant. He was checking in, making sure she was okay, reminding her she wasn't alone. Emma had fully absorbed Lena into their household routine. She insisted Lena help her pick out clothes in the morning, even though Lena had no idea what 6-year-olds wore to school. She wanted Lena to sign her homework folder alongside Caleb's signature. She started saving half her stories from the day for Lena, as if she'd decided that some things were for Daddy and some things were for her new friend. One Saturday afternoon, Emma was at a birthday party, and Caleb and Lena found themselves alone in the apartment for the first time in days. They'd fallen into an unspoken agreement not to discuss the feelings that had surfaced that night after the hearing. It was safer to keep things simple, to maintain the boundaries of guest and host, to not complicate what was already a complicated situation. But being alone together changed the energy, made it harder to ignore what was building between them. Caleb was fixing the kitchen cabinet that had been sticking for months. Lena was reading on the couch but found herself watching him instead. The competent way his hands worked, the concentration on his face, the unconscious grace of someone who'd spent years working with his body. "You're staring," he said without looking up. "Sorry, I was just thinking." About? About how different my life looks now compared to a month ago. How different I feel. He set down his screwdriver and turned to face her. "Different how?" "Lighter. Like I can breathe fully for the first time in years. Like I'm remembering who I used to be before I let someone else define me." "Who were you? Before Marcus?" She thought about it. "Quieter than I am now. More careful. I grew up in a house where emotions weren't discussed, where you kept everything inside and presented a perfect surface to the world. The library was perfect for me. All those stories about other people's lives, other people's feelings. I could experience things vicariously without risking anything myself." "And then Marcus made you feel like you could risk something?" "At first, yes. He was so sure about everything, so confident. It felt safe to let him make decisions, to follow his lead. I didn't realize I was giving away pieces of myself until there was nothing left." Caleb came to sit beside her on the couch, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "You're getting those pieces back. I see it every day. The way you laugh now. The way you argue with me about stupid things like whether we need to buy the expensive peanut butter or if the cheap stuff is fine." She smiled. "The expensive peanut butter is objectively better." "That's exactly what I mean. A month ago you wouldn't have had an opinion. Now you're willing to fight me over condiments." "Is that what you want? Someone who fights with you?" The question hung between them, heavier than she'd intended. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "I want someone who's fully themselves, who doesn't disappear to make me comfortable, who challenges me and calls me out and isn't afraid to take up space." He met her eyes. "Someone like who you're becoming." "Caleb, I know, bad timing. You're still healing. You just got out of a terrible marriage. The last thing you need is me adding pressure or expectations." "That's not what I was going to say." She turned to face him fully. "I was going to say that I don't know how to do this, how to have feelings for someone that aren't based on fear or need or survival, how to want someone from a place of strength instead of weakness. Maybe you don't have to know. Maybe you just feel it and see where it goes. What if I mess it up? What if I'm too damaged or too scared or too—" He reached over and took her hand, silencing her spiral. His palm was calloused, warm, steady. "You're not damaged. You're healing. There's a difference." She looked down at their joined hands, feeling the simple rightness of it. "I don't want to lose this. What we have right now. You and Emma and this feeling of safety. What if trying for more ruins it? What if not trying means we miss something real?" Before she could answer, her phone rang. The library. Her boss, Sharon, apologizing for calling on a Saturday, but they had an emergency. The volunteer who was supposed to run the children's story hour had canceled, and they had 20 kids showing up in an hour with no one to read to them. Could Lena possibly come in? She looked at Caleb apologetically. I should go. It's fine. I'll pick up Emma from the party. I'm sorry, we were in the middle of, we've got time. This conversation isn't going anywhere. At the library, chaos reigned. 20 children under the age of 8 packed into the small reading corner, parents hovering anxiously, and no plan for how to keep them entertained for an hour. Sharon looked relieved when Lena arrived. You're a lifesaver. The books are already picked out. All you have to do is read and keep them engaged. Lena settled into the reading chair, the children arranged on the carpet in front of her. She'd done this before, back when she first started at the library, before Marcus had convinced her she was too busy to volunteer for extra programs. She'd forgotten how much she enjoyed it, the rapt attention of small faces, the joy of bringing stories to life, the simple pleasure of sharing something she loved. She was halfway through the third book when she noticed Caleb and Emma slip into the back of the room. Emma's face lit up when she saw Lena, and she wiggled her way through the other children to sit right up front. Caleb leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching with an expression that made Lena's heart skip. After story hour ended and the children dispersed, Emma ran up to Lena with excitement. You're so good at reading stories, even better than Daddy, and he's really good. I don't know about that, Lena said, laughing. It's true, Caleb said, walking over. I do all the voices, but you make the stories feel real. There's a difference. Emma tugged on Lena's hand. Will you read to me tonight, the chapter book Daddy and I are reading? We're on chapter 7 and it's really exciting. Lena glanced at Caleb, not wanting to overstep. He nodded. If Lena wants to, that's fine with me. That evening, Lena sat on the edge of Emma's bed reading about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals. Emma was curled up under her blankets, eyes heavy but fighting sleep because she wanted to know what happened next. Caleb stood in the doorway, watching them both. When Emma finally drifted off mid-sentence, Lena carefully closed the book and turned off the bedside lamp, leaving only the soft glow of the nightlight. She stood to leave and found Caleb still there, his expression unreadable. They walked back to the living room in silence. Lena expected him to retreat to his room like he usually did around this time, giving her space and privacy on the couch. But instead he sat down, and she settled beside him. She's getting attached to you, he said quietly. I can see it happening, and I don't know if I should be worried or grateful. What do you want to be? Both. She's already lost one mother. If you leave, if this doesn't work out, I'm not going anywhere, Lena said firmly. Even if things between us never become more than friendship, I'm not going to disappear on Emma. I care about her too much. You say that now. But life happens. Things change. Then we adapt. But Caleb, I need you to hear me. I spent 5 years with someone who made me feel like I was always about to lose everything if I didn't behave exactly right. I'm not going to live that way anymore. I'm choosing to be here, actively, every day. That's not something that's going to change just because things get complicated. He looked at her for a long moment, something working behind his eyes. I'm scared, he admitted. I haven't let myself care about anyone since Sarah left. It was easier to just focus on Emma, to keep everything simple. But you've complicated things, and I don't know how to uncomplicate them, and I'm not sure I want to. I'm scared too, terrified actually, because this feels different from anything I've ever known, and I don't have a roadmap for it. So what do we do? I think we stop overthinking it, stop waiting for permission or perfect timing. We just see what happens. Caleb reached for her hand again, that same gesture from earlier, but this time he held on, threading his fingers through hers. Okay. We see what happens. They sat like that for a long time, hands joined, not talking, just being together in the quiet apartment. And when Lena finally went to sleep on the couch that night, it was with the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. They'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross, acknowledged feelings they couldn't unfeel. Whatever came next would be different. The following Tuesday, Lena had her first therapy appointment. Patricia had recommended a counselor who specialized in domestic violence recovery, and Lena had been putting off calling for weeks. But Caleb had gently pushed her, reminding her that healing wasn't just about legal protection and physical safety. It was about dealing with the internal damage too. Dr. Sarah Kim was in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner that Lena appreciated. She didn't waste time with pleasantries, just dove straight in. Tell me about your marriage. Lena had told this story before, to Patricia, to the police, to herself in the mirror on bad nights. But telling it to Dr. Kim felt different, less about documenting abuse and more about understanding how she'd ended up there in the first place. I think I was lonely, she said. And when Marcus paid attention to me, when he made me feel special, I mistook that for love. I didn't see the control until I was already trapped in it. What did the control look like in the beginning? Small things. He'd suggest what I should wear, and I thought he was being helpful. He'd want to know where I was, and I thought he cared. He'd get jealous when I talked to other men, and I thought it meant I mattered to him. By the time I realized it wasn't care, it was ownership. I'd already isolated myself from everyone who might have helped me see it clearly. Dr. Kim made notes. And when did you first realize you wanted to leave? Lena thought back. There wasn't one moment. It was gradual. Little things would happen, and I'd think, this isn't right, but then I'd push it down. Tell myself I was overreacting, that all marriages had problems, that I just needed to try harder. What finally made you stop pushing it down? He locked me out in the rain, and I had nowhere to go. And in that moment, sitting on that porch, I realized I'd rather have nothing than keep living like that. That's when I called Caleb. Tell me about Caleb. Lena felt her face warm. He's someone I barely knew who took me in without hesitation. Who's given me space to heal? Who treats me like a person instead of a problem to solve? And you have feelings for him. It wasn't a question. Lena nodded. That's normal, Dr. Kim said. When we escape abusive situations, we're often drawn to people who represent safety, but you need to be careful not to jump from one relationship into another without doing the work of understanding yourself first. I know. I'm trying to take it slow. Are you? Because from what you're describing, you're living with him, helping raise his daughter, already deeply enmeshed in his life. That's not slow, Lena. That's just a different kind of intensity. The words stung because they were true. So what am I supposed to do? Move out? Keep my distance? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm asking you to be honest about what you're doing and why. Are you with Caleb because you genuinely care about him, or because he represents rescue and you've confused that with love? Lena sat with the question. It was one she'd been avoiding asking herself. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe both. Does that make it less real? Not necessarily, but it means you need to be careful. You're still healing, still figuring out who you are outside of Marcus's control. Adding a romantic relationship to that mix, especially one that comes with the complexity of a child, could be overwhelming. Everything feels overwhelming right now. That's because you're doing hard work, leaving an abusive relationship, rebuilding your sense of self, learning to trust your own judgment again. That's enormous. Give yourself credit for how far you've come. The session left Lena feeling unsettled. She'd wanted Dr. Kim to validate what she was feeling for Caleb, to tell her it was okay to move forward. Instead, she'd been challenged to examine her motivations, to question whether she was truly ready for what she seemed to want. When she got home, Caleb was making dinner while Emma did homework at the kitchen table. The scene was so domestic, so comfortable, that Lena felt a pang of longing for it to be her real life instead of borrowed time. How was therapy? Caleb asked, stirring pasta sauce. Enlightening, uncomfortable, necessary. The best therapy usually is. He studied her face. You okay? I don't know. Can we talk later? After Emma's asleep? That night, after the dinner dishes were done and Emma was tucked in, Lena and Caleb sat together on the couch. She'd been rehearsing what to say all evening, but now that the moment was here, the words felt inadequate. My therapist asked me if I was confusing rescue with love, she said finally. If my feelings for you are real, or if they're just about safety and gratitude. Caleb's expression didn't change. What did you tell her? That I don't know. And I hate that I don't know because I want to be sure. I want to trust my own feelings. But Marcus twisted everything so much that I don't know what's real anymore. That's fair. That's honest. You're not angry? Why would I be angry? You're being smart, careful. That's what you should be doing. She turned to face him fully. But what if being careful means I miss something real?
What if I'm so busy protecting myself that I can't see what's right in front of me? Then we give it time. Lena, I'm not going anywhere. If you need space to figure yourself out, I can give you that. If you need time to heal before we try to be anything more than friends, I can wait. Whatever you need. What do you need? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He was quiet for a moment, thinking.
I need to know that if we do this, if we try to be more than what we are right now, that you're doing it because you want to, not because you feel obligated, not because I gave you a place to stay, or because you think you owe me something. I need it to be a choice you're making from strength, not desperation. I understand that. I do. But Caleb, how do I know the difference? How do I know when I'm ready? I don't think you ever know for sure. You just reach a point where the risk feels worth taking. They sat in silence, both processing. Outside, rain had started again, a soft spring rain instead of the violent storm that had brought Lena to his door. The sound was soothing, peaceful. Can I ask you something, Lena said, about Emma's mom? Anything. Do you still love her? Even a little? Caleb considered the question. I don't think I ever really loved her. Not the way you're supposed to love someone you build a life with. We were young and reckless, and we confused chemistry for compatibility. By the time we realized we didn't actually like each other very much, Emma was on the way. We tried to make it work because that's what you're supposed to do, but it was never real. Do you think Emma knows that? I think she knows her mom chose to leave, and I think she knows I chose to stay. That's what matters to her. You're a good father. I try. Most days I feel like I'm making it up as I go. That's what makes you good at it, the trying. He smiled at that, and the expression transformed his face from tired to tender. Lena felt her heart constrict with how much she cared about this man, this complicated feeling that was part gratitude and part attraction and part something deeper she didn't have words for yet. I want to kiss you, she said suddenly. I've wanted to for weeks, but I'm scared that if I do, everything will change and I'll lose this safe space we've built. Caleb didn't move closer, didn't try to close the distance between them. Everything's already changing. It has been since the night you called me. We can't go back to being strangers who barely know each other. That ship has sailed. So what do? We make a choice. We decide if we're brave enough to try for something more, knowing it might not work. Or we stay where we are, safe, but wondering what if. Lena thought about the past month, about the small moments that had built into something significant, the late-night conversations, the easy silences, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, about Emma's trust and affection, about waking up every morning in a place where she felt valued instead of controlled. She thought about Dr. Kim's question, was this rescuer real? And then she stopped thinking and leaned forward, closing the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that was gentle and uncertain and absolutely terrifying in its rightness. Caleb responded immediately, his hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. The kiss deepened, became more sure, more real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Lena rested her forehead against his. That felt real, she whispered. Yeah, it did. They stayed like that, foreheads touching, breathing each other's air, both of them aware they'd just crossed a line there was no uncrossing. What now? Lena asked. Now we take it one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. We just see where this goes. And Emma? We're careful. We don't confuse her or make promises we can't keep. But Lena, she already loves you. That's not going to change whether we're together or not. I love her too, so much it scares me. Good. Fear means you care, means you understand the stakes. They stayed up late that night, talking about everything and nothing, stealing kisses in between conversations, learning the shape of this new thing growing between them. And when Lena finally lay down on the couch to sleep, it was with Caleb's goodnight kiss still warm on her lips, and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to be happy again. The next few weeks unfolded with a sweetness that felt almost fragile. Caleb and Lena navigated their new relationship carefully, aware of Emma's presence and the need to move slowly. They didn't announce anything to Emma, just let their affection become part of the natural rhythm of the household. A hand held across the dinner table, Caleb's arm around Lena's shoulders while they watched TV,
Small gestures that Emma absorbed without comment, but with a knowing smile that suggested she understood more than they gave her credit for. Lena started looking at apartments, but half-heartedly. Every place she saw felt wrong, too empty, too quiet, too far from the life she'd been building with Caleb and Emma. She told herself she was just being practical, waiting until she'd saved more money, but the truth was, she didn't want to leave. And then Marcus got out of jail. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. Patricia, her voice tight with professional concern. Marcus had served his 90 days. He was being released. The restraining order was still in effect. He couldn't contact Lena or come within 500 feet, but he was free. Lena felt the old fear resurface immediately, cold and familiar. She was at work when she got the call, surrounded by books and quiet patrons. But suddenly the library felt exposed, vulnerable. Every person who walked in could be him. Every sound made her jump. She called Caleb. "I'm coming to get you," he said without hesitation. "Stay inside. I'll be there in 15 minutes. When he arrived, she was waiting by the staff entrance, her coat already on. She climbed into his truck without a word, and he drove them home in silence, his jaw tight with tension. At the apartment, Emma was at a friend's house, wouldn't be home for hours. Lena paced the living room, unable to sit still. "He's going to come after me," she said. "The restraining order won't stop him. It didn't before." "Then we're prepared. The police know the situation. Patricia knows. Your work knows. Everyone is watching for him." "That's not enough. You don't know what he's like when he's angry, when he feels humiliated. He'll find a way." Caleb stopped her pacing by taking her shoulders gently. "Look at me. You're not alone in this. He tries anything. He goes back to jail. He knows that. He's not stupid. He's vengeful. That's worse than stupid." That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound from the street below. Every car that drove past. Every voice in the distance. Around 2 a.m., she heard Caleb's bedroom door open. He sat down on the edge of the couch, his presence solid and reassuring in the darkness. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Figured you might want company." They moved to the kitchen, made tea they didn't drink, sat across from each other at the small table. "Tell me about your worst-case scenario," Caleb said. "The thing you're most afraid of." "That he shows up here. That he hurts you or Emma trying to get to me. That I've brought danger into your lives and I can't protect you from it. That's not going to happen. You can't know that." "You're right, I can't. But Lena, you can't live in fear of what might happen. That's letting him control you even when he's not here. So what do I do?" "You live your life. You go to work. You come home. You read to Emma and help with homework and argue with me about peanut butter. You don't give him the power to make you small again." "What if I can't?" "Then I'll remind you every day that you're stronger than you think, that you've already survived the worst of it, that whatever comes next, we face it together." The simple certainty in his voice steadied her. She reached across the table and took his hand. "I don't want to lose this. What we're building. It's too good, too real." "Then don't lose it. Hold on to it. Fight for it." They sat in the quiet kitchen, hands joined, both of them aware that the peace they'd found was fragile but worth defending. And when the sun finally rose on another day, Lena made a choice. She would not let Marcus steal one more moment of her life. She would not let fear dictate her future. She would live, fully and bravely, and trust that the man sitting across from her meant what he said. They would face whatever came next together. 3 days passed without incident. Lena went to work, came home, fell into the rhythm of evenings with Caleb and Emma. But the fear never fully left. It lived in her shoulders, tight and constant. It lived in the way she checked over her shoulder walking to her car. It lived in the way she startled at sudden noises. On Saturday morning, Emma had a soccer game. Caleb tried to convince Lena to stay home, to rest, but she refused. She wasn't going to miss watching Emma play, wasn't going to let Marcus's release dictate what she did or didn't do. The soccer field was crowded with parents and siblings, everyone bundled against the cool spring air. Emma's team wore bright green jerseys and had more enthusiasm than skill. Lena and Caleb sat on the metal bleachers, shoulders touching, cheering every time Emma touched the ball. Halfway through the second half, Lena saw him. Marcus stood at the far end of the field, beyond the parking lot, just at the edge of the 500-foot boundary.
He wasn't moving closer, wasn't violating the restraining order. He was just standing there, watching, making sure she knew he could find her. Her breath caught. Caleb followed her gaze and immediately tensed. "Stay here with Emma," he said quietly. "I'm calling the police." "He's not technically doing anything wrong. He's outside the boundary. He's intimidating you. That's enough." Caleb walked away to make the call while Lena sat frozen, watching Marcus watch her. Even from this distance, she could read his body language, the casual stance that said he had all the time in the world, the deliberate stillness that was its own kind of threat. Emma scored a goal. Her team erupted in celebration. Emma looked to the bleachers, searching for Lena and Caleb, her face bright with pride. Lena forced herself to stand, to cheer, to give Emma this moment even as her heart hammered against her ribs. When she looked back, Marcus was gone. The police arrived 10 minutes later, took statements, drove the perimeter. But Marcus had vanished, careful not to leave evidence of his presence. The officer, a young man who looked barely old enough to shave, was sympathetic but clear. "Unless he violates the restraining order, there's not much we can do. Being in public spaces isn't illegal, even if his intent is to intimidate." "So what am I supposed to do?" Lena asked. "Just wait for him to cross the line?" "Document everything. Times, locations, any contact he attempts. Build a pattern. If he escalates, we can act." After the game, Emma was full of excitement about her goal, oblivious to the tension radiating from the adults. They took her for ice cream as promised, sat in the bright shop while she chattered about the game, about her friend Madison who'd fallen in the mud, about how next week she wanted to try playing goalie. Caleb and Lena exchanged glances over Emma's head, both of them thinking the same thing. How do we protect her from this? How do we keep her childhood normal when danger is circling just outside the boundaries? That night, after Emma was asleep, they had the conversation they'd been avoiding. "Maybe I should move out," Lena said. "Get my own place. If Marcus is watching me here, he knows about you and Emma. I can't put you at risk." "Absolutely not. You're safer here than you would be alone." "But Emma is fine. She's happy. She feels secure. Moving you out would scare her more than keeping you here." "You don't know that." "I do know that, because I know my daughter, and I know that she's attached to you, that she feels like we're a family now. Taking that away from her to chase some theoretical safety, that would hurt her more than any risk Marcus poses." Lena stood, paced to the window, looked out at the dark street below. "I feel like I'm waiting for something terrible to happen, like I can't breathe until it does." Caleb came to stand behind her, his hands on her shoulders. "Then we change how we're thinking about this. We stop waiting. We stop being afraid. We live our lives, and if he shows up, we deal with it then." "How do you stay so calm?" "I'm not calm. I'm furious. But giving in to fear won't help. Action helps, so we take action. We install a security camera at the door. We vary your route to work. We make sure someone always knows where you are. We prepare without panicking." She leaned back against him, drawing strength from his steadiness. "When did you get so wise about this?" "When I became responsible for a tiny human who needed me to have my act together. You learn to manage fear when someone else is counting on you." Over the next week, they implemented Caleb's plan. A camera went up outside the apartment door, motion activated and connected to both their phones. Lena started parking in different spots at the library. Caleb picked her up from work more often, varying the times. They moved through life with awareness, but refused to let it become paralysis. And slowly, gradually, Lena felt herself relaxing. Not completely. She didn't think she'd ever feel completely safe again, but enough to function. Enough to laugh at Emma's jokes and focus on her work and fall asleep without lying awake for hours. 2 weeks after Marcus's release, Lena had her follow-up appointment with Dr. Kim. "How are you managing the fear?" the therapist asked. "Better? Worse? Both? I'm trying not to let it control me, but it's always there." "That's normal. After trauma, our nervous systems stay hypervigilant. It takes time to calm down." "How much time?" "That's different for everyone. But Lena, I want to talk about something else. You mentioned last time that you're in a relationship with Caleb now. We're taking it slow, being careful." "Are you?" "Because from what you're describing, you're living together, co-parenting his daughter, building a life together. That's not slow. That's committed. Lena felt defensive. What's wrong with that? Nothing, if it's what you truly want. But I'm concerned you're using this relationship to avoid dealing with the harder work of being alone, of figuring out who you are outside of a partnership. I am figuring that out. I'm stronger now than I was 2 months ago. You are. I can see that. But strength that comes from another person's presence isn't the same as strength that comes from within. What happens if things don't work out with Caleb, if the relationship ends? Then I deal with it, but why are you so convinced it's going to end? Dr. Kim leaned forward. I'm not. But statistically, relationships that form in the immediate aftermath of trauma have high failure rates. The intensity feels real, but it's often more about the crisis than genuine compatibility. You don't know us. You don't know what we have. You're right. I don't. But I know you're still healing. I know you haven't lived independently since leaving Marcus. I know you went from one household directly into another without spending any time alone. The words stung because they echoed Lena's own private doubts, the ones she pushed down every time they surfaced. So what are you saying? That I should break up with Caleb, move out? I'm saying you should ask yourself hard questions. Are you with him because you love him, or because he represents safety and you're afraid of losing that safety? Would you be making the same choices if you weren't afraid of Marcus? Lena sat with that for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe fear is part of it, but that doesn't make my feelings less real. No, it doesn't, but it does make them more complicated, and complications can become problems if you don't address them. The session left Lena unsettled again. She hated that doctor. Kim kept challenging her, kept making her question what felt good and right and real, but she also knew the therapist was doing her job, pushing Lena to think critically about her choices instead of just following what felt comfortable. When she got home, Caleb and Emma were in the kitchen making dinner together. Emma stood on a step stool, carefully stirring something on the stove under Caleb's supervision. The scene was so domestic, so perfect, that Lena felt her throat tighten. This was what she wanted, this warmth, this belonging, this sense of family. But was Dr. Kim right? Was she confusing rescue with love? Hey, Caleb said, looking up with a smile. How was therapy? Productive. Challenging. She set down her bag. Can we talk later? Something in her tone made his smile fade slightly. Of course. After dinner, after Emma's bath and bedtime story, they sat together on the couch. Lena had rehearsed what she wanted to say, but now the words felt inadequate. My therapist thinks I'm using our relationship to avoid dealing with my trauma, she said finally. That I went from Marcus directly to you without taking time to be alone. Caleb was quiet, his expression unreadable. What do you think? I think she might be right, at least partially. I think I was drowning and you were a life raft, and I grabbed on without thinking about whether it was fair to you or healthy for me. And now I don't know, because my feelings for you are real, Caleb. I know they are. But I also know I'm still scared and still healing, and maybe I can't trust my own judgment yet. He nodded slowly. So what do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to pull back, take space, figure myself out independently. But part of me knows that would hurt you and Emma, and I can't stand the thought of causing either of you pain. Don't stay because you're worried about hurting us. That's not fair to anyone. I'm not. I'm staying because I want to. But I need you to know that I'm questioning everything right now, that I'm trying to figure out what's real and what's just survival instinct. Caleb took her hand, the gesture familiar now, comforting. I appreciate your honesty. And Lena, if you need space, we can figure that out. You could get your own place, but still be part of our lives. Still see Emma. Still see me. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Would that be enough for you, seeing each other but not living together? I don't know. But I'd rather have you in my life in whatever capacity works than lose you completely because we rushed into something you weren't ready for. She felt tears building. Why are you so understanding? Why aren't you angry that I'm questioning us? Because you should question us. You should be sure. And honestly, I've been questioning it too. Wondering if what we have is real or if it's just circumstances pushing us together. Wondering if I'm taking advantage of your vulnerability. You're not. You've never pushed me, never expected anything. But I let you stay. I let you become part of Emma's life.
I let myself fall for you knowing you were still healing. Maybe that was selfish. They sat in the honesty of it, both of them acknowledging the messy reality beneath the sweet surface. I don't want to lose this, Lena said, but I also don't want to build something on a foundation of fear and need. I want it to be real. Then we make sure it's real. We slow down. We create some space. We figure out who we are as individuals and see if we still want to be together. That's terrifying. Yeah, it is. The decision came gradually over the next few days. Lena would find her own apartment, something small and affordable within walking distance so she could still be close to Emma. She'd move out, but they'd still see each other regularly, still figure out their relationship without the intensity of constant proximity. When they told Emma, she cried. Why does Lena have to leave? Did I do something wrong? Caleb pulled her into his lap. No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Lena just needs her own space, but she's not going far. You'll still see her all the time. But why can't she just stay here? There's room. Because sometimes grown-ups need their own places. It doesn't mean Lena doesn't love us. It just means she needs something of her own. Emma looked at Lena with tear-filled eyes. You promise you won't disappear like my mom did? Lena's heart broke. She knelt down in front of Emma, taking her small hands. I promise. I'm not going anywhere. I'll still come to your soccer games and read you stories and help with homework. I'll just be sleeping somewhere else, that's all. Can I come visit your new place? As often as your dad says it's okay. Every day? Lena laughed through her own tears. Maybe not every day, but a lot. I promise. Finding an apartment took 3 weeks. Lena looked at a dozen places before settling on a studio above a bookstore, 3 blocks from Caleb's building. It was small but had good light and hardwood floors and enough space for her to build a life that was hers alone. Moving day was harder than she'd anticipated. Caleb helped her carry her few belongings up the narrow stairs while Emma supervised, pointing out where things should go. The apartment felt empty even with her stuff in it, echoing in a way that made Lena's chest tight. After everything was unpacked, after Emma had been promised another visit tomorrow, after Caleb had checked all the locks and windows, they stood awkwardly at the door. You going to be okay here? He asked. I think so. It's just different. Yeah. He pulled her into a hug, holding on longer than necessary. Call if you need anything. I'm 3 blocks away. I know. After they left, Lena stood in the center of her new apartment and cried. Not because she regretted the decision, but because it was hard. Because she'd gotten used to falling asleep hearing Caleb moving around in the next room, hearing Emma's soft breathing down the hall. Because this silence felt vast and lonely in a way she hadn't expected. But it was also hers. Her space, her choice, her life to build however she wanted. The first week alone was an adjustment. Lena had forgotten what it was like to be responsible only for herself, to make decisions without considering anyone else's schedule or needs. She ate cereal for dinner, stayed up too late reading, woke up at odd hours without worrying about disturbing anyone. And slowly, she started to remember who she'd been before Marcus, started to reclaim interests she'd abandoned. She joined a book club at the library, started running in the mornings, signed up for a pottery class she'd always wanted to try. She saw Caleb and Emma several times a week. They'd have dinner together or take Emma to the park or just hang out at one apartment or the other. But the desperate intensity had eased into something gentler, more sustainable. One evening, about a month after she'd moved out, Caleb came to her apartment alone. Emma was at a sleepover. They ordered takeout and ate sitting on her small couch, talking about their days. How are you doing? He asked. Really? Better. Good, actually. I'm starting to feel like myself again, like I'm a whole person instead of just a collection of fears and reactions. That's good. I can see it. You're lighter. How are you? How's Emma handling everything? She's okay. Misses you being around all the time, but she's adjusting. And honestly, I think some space has been good for me too. I'd gotten used to having you there, to relying on you. It's been good to remember I can handle things on my own. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lena spoke. I've been thinking about us, about what we are and what we might become. And I think my therapist was right. I needed this time alone, needed to prove to myself that I could be okay without someone else holding me together. But Caleb, now that I've done that,
I still want this. I still want you. Not because I need rescuing, but because I genuinely care about you. He set down his food, giving her his full attention. Are you sure? Because I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm sure. More sure than I've been about anything in a long time. This past month has shown me that I can be alone, that I can be independent, but it's also shown me that I don't want to be, not completely. I want to build something with you, slowly, carefully, but real. Caleb reached for her hand. I want that too, so much. But Lena, I need you to promise me something. What? That if it ever stops feeling right, if you ever feel like you're losing yourself again, you'll tell me. That we'll be honest even when it's hard. I promise. And I need you to promise that you'll tell me if I'm too much, if Emma's getting too attached, if any of this stops working for you. Deal. They sealed it with a kiss, different from the desperate ones in the early days. This was slower, surer, built on foundation instead of crisis. Over the next few months, they built their relationship intentionally. Dates that didn't involve Emma, conversations about futures and dreams and fears, learning each other outside the context of trauma and survival. Marcus remained a shadow, occasionally appearing at the edges of Lena's life. She'd see his truck parked on her street, get hang-up calls from unknown numbers, find him standing across from the library just beyond the restraining order boundary. Each time she documented it, reported it, built her case. And each time, instead of falling apart, she found herself getting angry. Not the helpless rage of her marriage, but the righteous fury of someone who decided she was done being afraid. One Saturday afternoon, she was walking out of the grocery store when she saw him. Marcus leaned against his truck in the parking lot, arms crossed, waiting. Her first instinct was to run, to call Caleb, to get to safety. But something made her stop. She was tired of running, tired of giving him power. She walked toward him, stopping just outside the 500-foot boundary. What do you want, Marcus? He pushed off the truck, staying on his side of the invisible line. Just wanted to see how you're doing, see if you've come to your senses yet. I have. That's why I left you. You think you're better off, living in that tiny apartment, playing house with some mechanic and his kid? You've downgraded, Lena. No, I've upgraded to a life where I'm not afraid, where I can breathe, where someone treats me like a person instead of a possession. His jaw tightened. He won't want you once he sees what you're really like. Once the novelty wears off and he realizes you're nothing special. The words were designed to hurt, to make her doubt herself. 6 months ago they would have worked, but now she just felt sad for him. You're wrong, but even if you weren't, I'd still be better off alone than I ever was with you. Because I've learned something, Marcus. My worth doesn't depend on whether someone else recognizes it. I know who I am now, and I'm never going to let anyone make me small again. She turned and walked away, her heart pounding but her head high. Behind her, she heard him yell something, but she didn't turn around. She got in her car, locked the doors, and drove straight to Caleb's apartment. When she told him what had happened, she expected anger or concern. Instead, he pulled her into a fierce hug. I'm so proud of you, he said into her hair. That took real courage. I'm shaking. That's okay. You're allowed to be scared and brave at the same time. That night, with Emma asleep and the apartment quiet around them, Caleb and Lena talked about the future, about what they wanted, what scared them, what they were willing to build together. I love you, Caleb said suddenly. I've been wanting to say that for months, but I didn't want to add pressure. But Lena, I love you. Not because you needed saving or because circumstances pushed us together. I love you because of who you are, brave and kind and determined to be better than what happened to you. Lena felt tears spill over. I love you too. I think I have for a while, but I was too scared to admit it, too worried it wasn't real. But it is. This is real. They sat together in the knowledge of it, this love they'd built from crisis and courage. And outside the window, the world continued turning, indifferent to their small happiness. But inside this apartment, 3 people who'd found each other through pain were learning that sometimes the strongest families aren't born. They're chosen, day after day, through the simple decision to stay. The seasons changed, autumn giving way to winter, and with it came a settling. Not the anxious kind of waiting for disaster, but the peaceful kind of building something that would last. Lena had been living in her studio apartment for 4 months now. and the space had transformed from empty echo to genuine home. She'd hung curtains she'd chosen herself, bought a small dining table where she ate breakfast while reading, filled the bookshelves with novels she'd been meaning to read for years. But most nights she still ended up at Caleb's apartment, or he at hers, neither of them quite ready to fully merge their lives, but unwilling to spend too many nights apart. Emma had adapted to the arrangement with the flexibility of childhood, treating both apartments as equally hers, leaving stuffed animals and coloring books in both places. It was a Tuesday evening in early December when everything finally came to a head. Lena was at Caleb's, helping Emma with a school project about family trees. They sat at the kitchen table, construction paper and markers spread between them, while Caleb made dinner. "So I put you here?" Emma asked, pointing to a branch she'd drawn next to Caleb's name. Lena's heart squeezed. "Sweetie, I'm not technically family. Maybe you should just put your dad and your grandma and—" "But you are family," Emma insisted with the absolute certainty of a 7-year-old. "You're here all the time. You help with my homework. You come to my games. That's what family does." Lena glanced at Caleb, who'd gone very still at the stove. He turned to look at her, and something passed between them, a question, an acknowledgement, a possibility. Before either of them could respond, Lena's phone rang, an unknown number. Her stomach dropped. She'd gotten better about not panicking at every unexpected call, but the instinct was still there. She answered cautiously. "Hello? Lena Brooks?" A woman's voice, professional and unfamiliar. "Yes?" "This is Officer Rodriguez. We met a few months ago when your ex-husband violated the restraining order. I'm calling because Marcus Brooks was arrested this afternoon for assault. He attacked a woman at a bar after she rejected his advances. She's pressing charges, and given his prior record, the DA is pursuing serious jail time." Lena sat down hard in the nearest chair. "How long?" "With his violation of the restraining order on his record and now this assault? We're looking at 2 to 5 years minimum. I wanted you to know because it means you'll finally have some real breathing room. He won't be able to intimidate you from prison." After the call ended, Lena sat staring at her phone. Caleb came over, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "What happened?" She told him, her voice oddly flat. Emma had gone back to her project, sensing adult conversation she didn't need to be part of. "That's good news," Caleb said carefully. "Isn't it?" "It is. It's just, I spent so long being afraid of him. And now he's someone else's problem. Some other woman had to get hurt for him to finally face real consequences." "That's not your fault." "I know. It just feels wrong to be relieved." Caleb pulled her up from the chair and into his arms. "You're allowed to be relieved. You're allowed to feel safe. You've earned that." That night, after Emma was asleep and they were curled together on the couch, Lena felt something release in her chest. A tension she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Marcus was going to prison. The restraining order would outlast his sentence. By the time he was free again, she would have built an entire life he had no part of. "I keep waiting to feel something bigger," she said. "Joy or triumph or vindication, but I just feel tired." "That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline for months. Now that the immediate threat is gone, your body's finally letting you rest." "Is it really gone, though? Or am I just going to be waiting for the next shoe to drop?" "I think eventually you'll stop waiting. It takes time." She turned to look at him. "Earlier, when Emma was asking about the family tree, you looked like you wanted to say something." Caleb was quiet for a moment, choosing his words. "I was going to say that she's right. You are family, maybe not on paper, but in every way that matters." "Caleb, I'm not asking you to move back in or get married or make any big decisions. I'm just stating a fact. You're part of our lives, part of our family. Emma knows it. I know it. The question is whether you know it." Lena felt tears building. "I do know it, and it terrifies me because I've never had this before, never had people who chose me, who wanted me around not because they needed something from me, but just because they loved me." "Get used to it, because we're not going anywhere." The weeks leading up to Christmas were filled with a lightness Lena hadn't experienced in years. Without the constant shadow of Marcus lurking, without the fear that every phone call might be a threat, or every trip to the grocery store might result in an encounter, she found herself actually enjoying life instead of just surviving it. She and Caleb took Emma to see the Christmas lights downtown, bundled in coats and scarves, drinking hot chocolate while Emma ran ahead pointing at every decoration. They went ice skating, where Lena fell more times than she stayed upright, and Emma laughed so hard she got hiccups. They baked cookies that were mostly burnt, but Emma declared the best she'd ever tasted. And through it all, Lena felt herself healing in ways she hadn't known she was broken. The constant vigilance eased. She started sleeping through the night. Her shoulders relaxed from the permanent hunch of anticipating danger. She laughed more, worried less, allowed herself to be present instead of always planning escape routes. On Christmas Eve, Lena was at her apartment wrapping presents when someone knocked on her door. She looked through the peephole and saw Patricia Chen, her lawyer, standing in the hallway looking official, even in casual clothes. "Patricia, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I was in the neighborhood and wanted to drop off some paperwork. Your divorce was finalized this morning. Merry Christmas." Lena took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was the official decree. She was no longer married to Marcus Brooks. After 5 years of marriage and 6 months of legal proceedings, it was over. Done. Final. "Thank you," she managed, "for everything, for taking my case, for fighting for me, for doing my job." Patricia smiled. "You did the hard part, Lena. You left. You stood your ground. You built a new life. I just handled the paperwork." After Patricia left, Lena sat on her couch holding the decree. She'd imagined this moment so many times, thought she'd feel triumphant or free or something dramatic. Instead, she just felt quiet, settled, like a chapter had closed and she was finally ready to start the next one. She called Caleb. "Can I come over? I have news." 20 minutes later, she was at his apartment. Emma was already in bed, too excited about Christmas morning to actually sleep, but trying valiantly. Caleb opened the door and immediately knew something had changed. "What happened?" She held up the papers. "I'm divorced, officially, legally single." He pulled her inside and kissed her, long and deep and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Merry Christmas," he said. "Merry Christmas." They spent Christmas morning at Caleb's apartment, Emma waking them up at 6 a.m. by jumping on the bed and demanding they come see what Santa had brought. The living room was a chaos of wrapping paper and ribbon, Emma tearing through presents with the single-minded focus only children possess. Lena had bought her a microscope she'd been wanting, one that connected to a tablet so she could take pictures of whatever she was examining. Emma's shriek of joy when she opened it was worth every penny Lena had saved. "This is the best present ever. Now I can look at bugs really close." Caleb caught Lena's eye over Emma's head, mouthing, "Thank you." She mouthed back, "You're welcome." After the present frenzy died down and Emma was absorbed in examining a leaf under her new microscope, Caleb pulled Lena into the kitchen. "I have something for you too," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Lena's heart stopped. The box was too small to be anything but jewelry, and for a panicked moment she thought he was proposing, and she didn't know if she was ready for that. If she could handle that level of commitment so soon after finally being free. But when she opened it, inside was a simple silver bracelet with a small charm, a key. "It's not an engagement ring," he said quickly, reading her expression. "I know you're not ready for that, but it is a promise. That you have a key to our lives, to our home, to our family. That there's always a place for you here whenever you want it." She felt tears spill over. "Caleb, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep showing up. That's all I need." "I will. I promise." He helped her put on the bracelet, the key charm settling against her wrist. It felt right, this symbol of access without obligation, of belonging without being owned. The new year arrived with its usual promise of fresh starts. Lena made resolutions that had nothing to do with losing weight or exercising more, and everything to do with continuing to rebuild her life. She signed up for a creative writing class she'd been eyeing, started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, using her experience to help other women find the courage to leave. Made plans to visit her sister in Colorado in the spring. She and Caleb settled into a rhythm that worked for them. Most nights together, some nights apart. Dates that were just the two of them, family time with Emma, individual pursuits that kept them both growing. It wasn't traditional, but it was theirs. In February, Dr. Kim told her she didn't need weekly therapy anymore. You've done remarkable work, Lena. 6 months ago, you were terrified of your own shadow. Now you're thriving. I don't know about thriving. Some days I still wake up scared. That's normal. Healing isn't linear, but you've built a life for yourself. You've established independence. You've created healthy relationships. You've learned to trust your own judgment again. That's everything we were working toward. So what now? Now you live. You keep building. You check in if you need to, but mostly you just move forward. Walking out of Dr. Kim's office for the last time felt both liberating and terrifying. She'd come to rely on these sessions, on having someone help her process and make sense of her feelings. But she also knew it was time. She was ready to stand on her own. March brought Emma's 8th birthday. They threw a party at the park with all her school friends, a princess cake Caleb had spent hours decorating, and enough games to tire out even the most energetic child. Lena helped coordinate everything, and more than one parent commented on what a great team she and Caleb made. "So when's the wedding?" Madison's mom asked, only half joking. Lena laughed. "We're taking things slow." "Slow? You've been together almost a year. We're making sure we get it right. No rush." But that night, after the party was cleaned up and Emma was crashed out in a sugar coma, Caleb brought it up. "People keep asking me when we're getting married." "Me too," Lena admitted. "Does it bother you?" "A little. Not because I don't want to marry you eventually, but because I feel like I just got free of one marriage. The idea of jumping into another one so soon makes my chest tight." "That's fair. For what it's worth, I'm not in a rush either. I like what we have. I don't need a piece of paper to make it more real." "But you do want that eventually? Marriage?" He considered the question. "I think so. But not because I need to lock you down or claim you or any of that possessive nonsense, just because I'd like to officially be a family, the three of us. But Lena, we can wait as long as you need, years if that's what it takes." "What if I'm never ready?" "Then we stay like this. It's still good. It's still real." The honesty between them had become their foundation. No games, no hidden expectations, just two people figuring out how to build something healthy and lasting. In April, Lena got a promotion at the library. She'd been acting as assistant director for months anyway, and when the position officially opened, the board voted unanimously to give it to her. The pay increase meant she could afford a bigger apartment, maybe even start saving for something more permanent. She looked at new places half-heartedly, but nothing felt right. Her studio was fine for now, and if she was honest with herself, she was already spending most nights at Caleb's anyway. One evening in May, almost a full year after she'd first called Caleb from that rain-soaked porch, they were sitting on his balcony watching the sunset. Emma was inside doing homework. The air was warm with the promise of summer. "I've been thinking," Lena said, "about my apartment." "Yeah?" "My lease is up in 2 months. I could renew it, or—" She took a breath. "Or I could move in here. With you and Emma. For real this time." Caleb turned to look at her, his expression careful. "Are you sure? Last time you needed your own space. I don't want you to feel pressured." "I'm not feeling pressured. I'm feeling ready. I've had a year to figure out who I am on my own. I've proved to myself that I can be independent. But Caleb, I don't want to be independent anymore, not completely. I want to be part of this family officially. I want to wake up here every morning, I want to share the bathroom and argue about whose turn it is to do dishes and read to Emma every night. I want all of it." "What changed?" "Me. I changed. I'm not the scared woman who showed up here needing to be saved. I'm someone who's choosing this life because it's what I want, not because I'm afraid of the alternative." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Then yes. Move in, please. Emma will be over the moon." They told Emma the next morning. She literally jumped up and down with excitement. "Does this mean Lena's going to be here all the time? For breakfast and everything?" "All the time," Caleb confirmed. "Can we make her room pretty? With curtains and stuff?" Lena laughed. "I'd like that. But Emma, I want to make sure you're really okay with this. It's going to be different, having me around all the time. If you need your own space, I want you here. You make Daddy happy, and you make good pancakes." The move happened on a Saturday in June. Lena didn't have much to bring. She'd been living lightly on purpose, not accumulating too much in case she needed to leave quickly.
But now she filled Caleb's apartment with her things, her books mixing with his on the shelves, her clothes finding space in his closet, her toothbrush permanent in the bathroom holder. It felt different from when she'd stayed here before. Then she'd been a guest, careful not to take up too much space. Now she was home. She rearranged furniture without asking permission, put her favorite mug in the cabinet, hung a photo of her and Emma on the fridge. That first night, after Emma was asleep and they were getting ready for bed together in the same room for the first time as an actual couple, Lena caught Caleb watching her. "What?" she asked. "Nothing, just thinking about that night you called me. How scared you were, how broken. And look at you now. I'm not fixed. I still have moments where I panic, where I expect Marcus to show up even though he's in prison, where I doubt myself. That's not broken, that's human. But Lena, you're not that terrified woman anymore. You're strong, confident, you know what you want, and you go after it." She climbed into bed beside him, into what would now be their bed. "What I want is this, you, Emma, this life we're building. You have it, all of it." The summer unfolded with a sweetness that felt earned. They took Emma camping, though none of them really knew what they were doing, and they spent more time laughing at their failed attempts to build a fire than actually camping. They went to the community pool where Emma took swimming lessons, and Lena learned to not be self-conscious in a bathing suit. They had movie nights and game nights, and nights where they just sat together on the balcony talking about everything and nothing. Lena's sister visited in July, meeting Caleb and Emma for the first time. Over dinner, she pulled Lena aside. "You seem happy, really happy, different from how you were with Marcus." "I am different, I'm myself. He's good for you, and that little girl adores you." "I adore her right back." In August, on the anniversary of the day Lena had first shown up at Caleb's door, they had a quiet celebration. No big party, just the three of them, and a cake Emma had insisted on making herself that was lopsided but delicious. "1 year ago I was terrified," Lena said as they ate cake on the balcony. "I didn't know if I was going to survive, if I'd ever feel safe again." "And now?" Caleb asked. "Now I know that surviving isn't enough. I want to thrive, and I am. We are." Emma, sitting between them with frosting on her face, looked up. "What's thriving?" "It means being happy and healthy and living your best life," Lena explained. "Then I'm thriving too. This is my best life." In that moment, with Emma between them and the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Lena felt something she'd never experienced before. Complete peace. Not the absence of problems. There would always be challenges, difficulties, moments of doubt, but the deep certainty that whatever came, they would face it together. September brought a new school year. Emma was starting 3rd grade, tall enough now that she insisted she didn't need help reaching the water fountain anymore. She introduced Lena to her teacher as "my dad's girlfriend who lives with us," and the teacher had smiled knowingly, as if she'd heard all about Lena already from Emma's constant chatter. In October, Caleb's mother visited from Arizona. Lena had been nervous about meeting her, worried about being judged or found lacking, but Mrs. Turner had wrapped her in a hug the moment she walked through the door. "So you're the woman who's made my son smile again. About time someone did." Over the weekend of her visit, she pulled Lena aside while Caleb and Emma were at the grocery store. "I want to thank you," she said, "for what you've done for them." "I haven't done anything special. You showed up. You chose them. That's everything. Caleb's been alone for so long, raising Emma by himself, convinced he didn't deserve help or happiness. And then you came along and reminded him that family isn't just biology. It's choice. He did the same for me, reminded me that I deserved kindness, safety, love. Then you're good for each other. That's rare. Don't let it go." "I won't, I promise." November brought the first snow. Emma insisted on building a snowman in the park, even though there was barely enough snow to make a small one. They stood together, the three of them, admiring their lopsided creation. "We should give him a name," Emma declared. "What about Frosty?" Caleb suggested. "That's boring. Everyone names snowmen Frosty." Emma thought hard. "What about Hope?" "Hope is a good name," Lena said, touched. "Why Hope?" "Because you always tell me that hope is what keeps us going when things are hard. And we worked really hard on this snowman, so he should be Hope."
Lena felt tears prick her eyes. She'd said that to Emma months ago, during a conversation about dealing with difficult things. She hadn't realized Emma was really listening. Hope it is, Caleb agreed. They took a photo, the three of them with Hope the snowman, Emma in the middle with her arms around both adults. Later that night, Caleb had the photo printed and framed, putting it on the mantle next to the other family photos. "We look like a real family," Emma said, studying the picture. "We are a real family," Lena told her. "The realest kind. The kind we chose to be." In early December, Lena and Caleb were at the courthouse for the final hearing regarding Marcus. His sentence was being formalized, 3 years for assault, with credit for time served. He'd be eligible for parole in 2 years if he showed good behavior. Lena had the option to give a victim impact statement. She'd written one, revised it a dozen times, trying to find the words to express what his abuse had done to her. But standing at the podium, looking at him in his orange jumpsuit, she realized she didn't want to give him that power anymore. "I spent 5 years being afraid of you," she said instead.
5 years believing I was nothing without you. 5 years letting you control every aspect of my life. But here's what I want you to know. I'm not afraid anymore. I've built a life that's better than anything I had with you. I found people who treat me with respect and kindness. I've remembered who I am and what I deserve, and you can't touch any of it. You tried to break me, and instead you set me free. So thank you for that. And goodbye." She walked away without looking back. In the hallway, Caleb was waiting. He pulled her into his arms. "I'm proud of you." "I meant it. I'm not afraid anymore. He's just someone I used to know." That night, they celebrated quietly. Emma was at a sleepover, giving them rare time alone. They cooked dinner together, drank wine, talked about the future. "I've been thinking about something," Caleb said as they cleaned up the dishes. "Yeah?" "About making us official. Not marriage necessarily, but something." I want people to know that we're a family, that you're not just my girlfriend, that you're Emma's. I don't even know what to call it. Parent, Lena said softly. That's what I am to her. Not her mom. That's a title I haven't earned and don't need. But I parent her. I show up for her. I love her. Would you want to make it legal? I've been looking into it, and there are ways to establish parental rights, to make sure that if something happened to me, you'd be able to take care of her, that legally you'd have a say in her life. Lena set down the dish she was washing. Are you serious? Completely. I want you to have legal rights as her parent. I want it documented that you're family. What does Emma think? I haven't asked her yet. I wanted to see what you thought first. I think I want that more than I can express. I think I want to be her legal parent, to have that security and responsibility and privilege.
They told Emma the next day, explaining it in terms an 8-year-old could understand, that Lena would become her legal guardian too, that if anything happened to Caleb, Lena would be the one to take care of her. So Lena would be like my other parent? Officially? Officially, Caleb confirmed. Emma thought about this. What would I call her? She's not my mom. You can call me whatever you want, Lena said. Lena is fine. Or if you want something else, can I call you Mama L? That way you're still Lena, but also kind of like a mom. Lena couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She nodded, pulling Emma into a hug. The paperwork took weeks to finalize. Background checks and home visits and interviews with social workers. But in January, exactly 18 months after Lena had first showed up on Caleb's doorstep, a judge signed the papers making her Emma's legal guardian. They celebrated with a family dinner, just the three of them. Emma made a card that said, "Welcome to the family officially," with drawings of all three of them holding hands. That night, after Emma was asleep, Caleb pulled out another small box. "Not again," Lena said, half laughing, half crying. "This time it is what you think it is, but before you panic, let me say something." He opened the box to reveal a simple ring, nothing flashy, just a silver band with a small diamond. "I'm not asking you to get married tomorrow, or next month, or even next year. I'm asking if someday, when you're ready, you'd want to marry me. To make this permanent in every possible way. No pressure, no timeline. Just the promise that when you're ready, I'll be here." Lena looked at the ring, then at him, then at the life they'd built together. She thought about the woman she'd been 18 months ago, broken and terrified. She thought about the woman she was now, strong and certain, and so full of love she could barely contain it. "Yes," she said.
"Someday, when I'm ready, I want to marry you. I want all of it. Forever." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, deep and sure, and full of promises they both intended to keep. Christmas that year was everything Lena had never known she wanted. A tree covered in ornaments Emma had made over the years, stockings with all three of their names, traditions they'd built together and new ones they were creating. On Christmas morning, Emma gave Lena a handmade gift, a picture frame decorated with stickers and glitter, holding a photo of the three of them. But it was what Emma had written on the back that made Lena cry. "To Mama L, thank you for choosing us. Love, Emma." "Thank you for choosing me," Lena whispered, pulling Emma close. That evening, after the chaos of presents and cooking and family phone calls, they sat together on the couch, Emma between them, half asleep, the Christmas lights casting soft shadows, the apartment warm and full of love. "I never thought I'd have this," Lena said quietly. "A family, a home, safety." "You deserve all of it," Caleb replied, his arm around both of them. "We all do. That's what I've learned, that we all deserve to be loved without fear, to be chosen without conditions, to build lives that make us happy instead of just surviving." Emma stirred, mumbling something about Santa and reindeer before settling back into sleep. "She's going to remember this," Caleb said. "All of it. The way we built this family. The love we chose to create." "Good. I want her to know that family isn't just something you're born into. It's something you build day by day with people who show up and stay." Outside, snow began to fall, soft and steady. Inside, three people who'd found each other through crisis and courage sat together in the warmth and light. They'd been broken in different ways, had survived different storms, but they'd found each other. They'd chosen each other.
And they'd built something that no storm could shake. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be hard days, moments of doubt, challenges to face. But they would face them together. This family formed not by blood, but by choice, not by circumstance, but by courage. And in the end, that was the strongest foundation of all. Lena looked at the ring on her finger, at the sleeping child between them, at the man who'd shown her what safety and love looked like. She thought about the phone call she'd made 18 months ago from a rain-soaked porch, desperate and terrified, not knowing if she'd survive the night. And she smiled because she hadn't just survived. She'd lived. She'd healed. She'd loved. She'd built a life worth living. The storm had passed, the sun had risen, and home, finally, was right here.